and welcome back. Today we're checking out another SCP video. Today this is going to be SCP-5000 Y. This is a commenter suggestion, so thank you very much for that. I know you've been asking for it for a while. Here it is. Probably going to be a two-parter, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
SCP-5000. Why? The SCP Foundation is an organization cemented in its goal of using its considerable resources and capabilities to protect humanity from the anomalous. One of the questions we'll be looking at today, however, is what would happen if that same organization instead used those same resources and capabilities to destroy humanity.
Okay.
The other question is, of course, the one presented in the title of SCP-5000, and that's why? What would or could corrupt an organization so completely that they would betray everything they once stood for? Strap yourselves in. It's going to be a wild ride.
All right, here we go.
Despite that buildup, SCP-5000 itself is pretty benign, with a safe object class kept in a standard storage unit. The object in question is a mechanical suit, currently broken, with its internal schematics identifying it as an absolute exclusion harness, designed by none other than the SCP Foundation.
Okay.
Based on what they can deduce, the suit, when functioning, would provide the wearer with a number of protective benefits, but currently it's only capable of basic file storage. It's the files contained in the suit's storage that we're really interested in. The suit first appeared in a flash of light, probably not unlike a Terminator's entrance, within the containment cell of SCP-579. 579 is a rather divisive SCP, since its entire description has been expunged from record, and the Foundation has pretty much given up on doing anything with it because it's incredibly dangerous.
Okay, I don't think we've covered 579, but alright.
Whatever it is. Needless to say, it's worrisome that a random mechanical suit created apparently by the Foundation appeared in a place they prefer to leave well enough alone, but there's more. The suit, upon arrival, contained the corpse of a man who apparently died from hitting the ground after a long fall.
Okay.
The corpse is genetically identical to a Foundation employee named Pietro Wilson, who is currently working at an exclusionary site, a facility similar to SCP-3936 that is created using a technology making it immune to time or reality restructuring events. In other words, if the world were to undergo some sort of drastic change that altered history or the reality of the planet, the personnel inside an exclusionary site wouldn't be affected, allowing them to make note of the changes. The actual living Pietro was, of course, interviewed and prodded, but he has no knowledge of the suit or the info in its files. Speaking of the files, let's finally get to it. The first journal entry is from, of course, Pietro, who says that the date is currently January 2nd, 2020, and he's just escaped from the exclusionary site. Some individuals had entered the site and killed everyone else, thoroughly, but Pietro managed to make it to the suit, which kept him alive. The next entry goes into a bit more detail, as Pietro heads for a nearby Foundation safe house used by agents in this part of the country. He explains that things started about 6 or 7 hours ago, when a mobile task force entered the exclusionary site with proper clearance, gathered everyone in the canteen, and started shooting. Pietro's just a technician for the site's power grid, so he's really not sure how the suit works, but its primary function makes it so that others can't recognize that they can perceive the wearer. In simpler terms, it functions sort of like an anti-memetic device, and it makes the wearer undetectable to others.
They said that it was called, an exclusion harness or something. So, and he describes it as kind of like an anti-memetic device, basically rendering the wearer unperceptible. I wonder if there's any caveats to that. Obviously, there's a difference between being perceived with a person's eyes and being perceived with electronic equipment, if you will, or sensors or cameras or something like that. So, I don't know. You would think that if this was designed by the Foundation, a suit specifically designed to keep its wearer unnoticed, that it was probably being designed for, presumably, for tests, for maybe testing other SCPs, being able to put personnel into situations that would otherwise be certain death. I can kind of see why the suit was being made if this is its purpose. But okay, let's keep going. Interesting.
As Pietro slipped out of the site, he noticed that the MTF weren't there to take anything, but just to kill everyone, putting an extra bullet in all the corpses. Pietro thinks at this point that it's possible the MTF was actually a group of infiltrators from the Chaos Insurgency, deep undercover, and as he makes his way to the safe house, he hears explosions in the distance, hoping that the Foundation sent in some teams to deal with them. Pietro is happy to find bottled water when he arrives at the safe house, as he apparently has been trudging through a desert, even though another function of the suit is to sustain the wearer's body.
Okay.
After resting, he boots up some of the computers at the safe house, and is quite shocked at what he finds. The SCP Foundation had sent a message to every government, news organization, and anomalous agency in the world. That alone would be pretty startling, but it's the content of the message that is really chilling. The message reads, "The following is a message composed via consensus of the O5 Council. For those who are not currently aware of our existence, we represent the organization known as the SCP Foundation. Our previous mission centered around the containment and study of anomalous objects, entities, and other assorted phenomena. This mission was the focus of our organization for more than 100 years. Due to circumstances outside of our control, this directive has now changed. Our new mission will be the extermination of the human race. There will be no further communication."
Well, that took a very hard turn there. They said, yeah, we've been protecting you guys and keeping you safe for over 100 years, and now we are making a complete 180 and going the opposite direction and exterminating everyone. Definitely begs the question, why?
That's right. The Foundation declared war on humanity, but interestingly, they had the decency to let us know first.
Yeah, a straight up declaration of what they were doing, which does seem kind of weird, considering that you've just given up an element of surprise, just giving that away. But okay. By announcing that you've declared war on anyone, you've kind of reduced a lot of your first strike options. But, the Foundation has anomalies and anomalous entities that could easily turn any tide of battle. So, they probably know what they're doing. But something is a little fishy here. Something smells a little fishy. Not quite right about what's happening and why it's going down this way.
The big question, though, is why, and all they said on the matter was because of circumstances outside of their control. Since the Foundation are pretty much the spitting image of control, it's rather puzzling, but we'll get to that. With the Foundation beginning their war, actively using the anomalies they've previously contained, Pietro manages to find snippets of what exactly they're doing along the way. I'm going to have to explain a lot of other SCPs throughout this, so bear with me if you're already familiar with them. SCP-096 is an entity that relentlessly pursues anyone that sees its face until it slaughters them. The Foundation circulates a picture of its face on various social media platforms, causing it to tear across the globe until its photos were taken down. But it's likely still hunting. SCP-169 is a massive sea creature known as the Leviathan, believed to be thousands of kilometers in length. A large number of nuclear charges were detonated along its back, causing it to stir slightly in its sleep, which was enough to cause devastating earthquakes and tsunamis across the world. SCP-662 is a small bell that summons a butler named Mr. Deeds, who can carry out most tasks asked of it, usually anomalously. Over the course of the first 24 hours after the announcement, Mr. Deeds appeared near several major heads of states and assassinated them before disappearing.
Yeah, they're not playing around. Butler's handbell. I probably, if my goal was to destroy everything, take over the world, and wipe out humanity, I mean, these are really logical ways to do that. Use circulating the Shy Guy's picture so that he goes on a never-ending rampage and just hunts everybody down. Excellent way to wipe out a large number of people, indiscriminately wipe out a large number of people. And then you've got basically the flip side of that is the Butler's handbell, where it's very specific and very targeted. And rather than sending something like the Shy Guy out to do as much damage to as many people as possible, you've got Mr. Deeds who can surgically strike at very specific targets and they'll never be safe. So if you wanted to attack a head of state who was in a bunker surrounded by guards, Mr. Deeds could get it done. When we did cover the Butler's handbell, you can check that video out. When we did cover the Butler's handbell, the only thing is they did say that he did have limits. He couldn't produce just anything, and he couldn't perform any task. There were limitations. If a person is well enough guarded, he may still not be able to get to them. Or if a task is basically physically impossible, he can't do it. So there is limitations to this, but he would still be an incredibly powerful weapon.
SCP-610, an extremely infectious and deadly disease that rapidly distorts living tissue, was released in many major cities, including New York and Delhi.
Oh, wow.
It spreads quickly, but is eventually halted through the combined efforts of the GOC and the Church of the Broken God,
okay,
who are not sharing the Foundation's new mission.
Yeah.
SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile, is simply released, which is bad enough. Next, we get some news footage of a reporter at an evacuation tent in Sweden, set up by the Global Occult Coalition. Patients are being treated by doctors in full protective gear, and the reporter repeats the GOC's orders to all residents that have not already evacuated, that they should seal themselves inside of their homes as quickly as possible. A doctor calls out to a nearby GOC soldier, telling them that a patient just died, and they should get the eraser ready. The reporter runs out of the tent into a field containing a number of similar tents. In the tent she just left, a loud buzzing sound can be heard, and several flashing lights can be seen. Thick smoke pours out of a gap at the top of the tent. The reporter recovers herself and continues, telling any residents still in a compromised area to keep a careful watch over those around them, and if any of them begin exuding a noticeable minty smell, they are to be quarantined immediately. This is all very likely a reference to SCP-447, a small green sphere that exudes a greenish slime.
447. Okay, haven't covered that one. All right.
The slime is edible, with a minty taste, and has various enhancing properties, but it's incredibly, horrifically dangerous if it ever comes into contact with a dead body.
Oh, okay.
What exactly happens is expunged from the record, but it's bad enough that the GOC is working diligently to completely erase dead bodies from existence before it happens. Pietro muses that with all of the supplies in the safe house and the exclusion suit, he could survive for years here, but he's conflicted between sitting there without knowing what's going on in the world and not really wanting to know what's going on.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one. You could stay there and just be blocked off from everything and have no idea what's going on, or you can go out there. I don't know. Given that he is in a suit specifically designed to essentially make you invisible, I'd go out. I would go out and explore and try and find resources or potentially find survivors. Let's keep going.
He recounts a story from his youth when he was really into detective tales, and he set out to find what was knocking over his dad's potted plants. He set up a camera and found it was a stray cat, and his dad proceeded to kick it to death. He figures that everyone would have been better off if he had
Wow.
just minded his own business. In this situation, though, he'd rather do something than nothing, and with the exclusion suit, he can simply be a tourist at the end of the world.
Yeah.
He leaves the safe house and heads towards Site 19, the nearest real Foundation facility, in search of answers. On the way, he manages to spy on a Foundation MTF in a clearing, lined up in a row. The commander of the team proceeds to pull out a knife and stab the first soldier in line in the shoulder to no effect. The commander continues down the line, stabbing each one in the shoulder with no reaction until reaching the 8th soldier, who cries out in pain. The commander shouts that they've got a live one, and the rest of the soldiers open fire on the 8th. Afterwards, they move out, and Pietro grabs some supplies from the body before burying it, quite confused. Moving on, Pietro catches a radio transmission, although it sounds practically like gibberish. The message is, 7, 5, can you hear me? There is a hole shining in the holes between your eyelids. I have never been to Versailles before. I want to be loved. 9, I am standing behind you now. 5, I am 2 of us, standing behind you now. The goddess eats the city and the sea. 9, there's a hole in the floor with an answer waiting in it. 7, look, you're hatching. You're hatching. The message simply continues to loop, and let's ignore most of the text for now and just look at the numbers. Continually looping numbers, 7, 5, and 9. Or perhaps 579. We know SCP-579 is relevant to the overall proceedings, but not sure why. When Pietro turns over the radio,
I don't know. To me, the first thing that came to mind was the the Umbrella Academy, seeing how the kids don't have names. Well, they do have names, but they're referred to by number. So when he was reading that to me, it almost sounded like a conversation between people who use numbers rather than names. Like someone named number 5 talking to number 7 and also someone number 9. That's what my brain heard when he was reading that off. It could be not that at all, but that's what I perceive it as.
looping the message, the transmission stops, and he sees the radio is damaged beyond repair. The plot thickens. While walking through a forest, Pietro comments on how far Site 19 actually is from the safe house, since he can't risk using a vehicle without being spotted. With the exclusion suit on, nothing can notice him, but something could come barreling through and collide with him unintentionally. He wonders why he's even going to Site 19, as rather than staying out of harm's way, he'll be jumping into the Viper's nest. He concludes that, more than anything, he wants answers. Finally, he arrives at Site 19, which is surprisingly easy to get into with the exclusion suit, and security in disrepair. Researchers are still working at the site, though, discussing how to achieve maximum human casualties, like it was what they've always been doing. Pietro comments that, looking at their eyes, it seemed like some sort of human spark was missing from them, and wonders if they're even alive. He logs into the Foundation database and pieces together a basic timeline of events before they released their declaration of war on January 2nd, 2020.
Yeah, something's definitely going on. When they told us about the MTF guys that he came across, where the commander was just walking down the line, stabbing his guys to see who would react, there's definitely something going on with the SCP personnel. Don't know what yet, but there's something that's affecting the personnel.
On December 16th, the O5 Council mark a project known as Numa as being of special interest. Project Numa was some sort of mass amnesticization program focused on the collective human unconsciousness, also called the psychospace. The idea of the psychospace is that humanity shares certain structures in our unconscious minds, like instincts. Apparently, the Foundation managed some sort of breakthrough in mapping out this whole psychospace for humanity, but Pietro can't see the specifics as they're redacted. The next day, the O5 Council puts something to a vote, with a unanimous decision, and the Ethics Committee also completely agrees. Something tells me that doesn't happen too often, but Pietro can't even see what the vote was about. On December 19th, a series of now redacted instructions were sent to all senior staff members and site directors across the Foundation. This is followed by a wave of both suicides and resignations, with Dr. Gears notably resigning from the organization. December 22nd sees a number of files sent out to all remaining senior staff and directors, with instructions to disseminate the files among the rest of their personnel.
So whatever they sent out, maybe it was their new game plan saying, hey, we're not containing stuff anymore. We're going to burn the world down. And obviously that would cause quite a few people to resign. I mean, that's obvious. And then they said a bunch of people committed suicide. Well, I would assume that these people did that because they understand that what the Foundation does, what it contains, and what they're about to do with it is going to end the world, and they don't want to be there for it. You know, either they don't want to be a part of it and have that on their hands, or they simply just don't want to be there when it happens because they know it's going to be terrible.
The files are accompanied by a message reading, "Harden your hearts," and all suicides and resignations cease after the files are spread. On Christmas Day, all communications in and out of Foundation sites are blocked.
That's also interesting. They sent out a second file, and after that, all that kind of stuff stopped. Whatever they're sending out in these messages probably has a mimetic component to it. It's probably affecting their minds. I mean, we know they're fully capable of doing that, so they're definitely controlling their own staff using some kind of mimetic device sent via message, via email or something.
And the majority of human and human sympathetic anomalies are terminated. An assassination team is sent after Dr. Gears, but it's unclear if they were successful. On January 2nd, MTFs are sent to all exclusionary sites to execute all personnel. And then they declared war on humanity. Something clearly affected the O5 Council right after some sort of breakthrough in looking into humanity's unconscious minds.
Yeah.
It's highly unlikely that what affected them was non-anomalous, and it was able to quickly spread through the Foundation. That part isn't too tricky to comprehend, but it gets a bit more confusing when pondering what exactly this infection wants, and why they would specifically go to kill the exclusionary site personnel instead of bringing them on their side. Pietro, of course, is also quite confused, but finds more information about various anomalies the Foundation has unleashed. SCP-1370 is a robot containing an artificial intelligence that is invariably hostile to everyone it encounters, promising them doom and destruction, despite being utterly harmless. 1370 is put onto every television across the world, continually rambling about how he's going to soon take over the world. Pietro remarks that this one isn't too bad. What is pretty bad, though, is SCP-1048, the Builder Bear, who can create incredibly hostile and incredibly violent copies of itself out of any material it can find. Helicopter footage shows hordes of bears rushing through the streets of Paris, with a massive red teddy bear in the distance. SCP-1290 are two electronic devices capable of near instantaneous teleportation between them. The problem is that objects undergoing teleportation retain their orientation and velocity relative to the Earth, meaning that objects arriving at the other end come out at around 930 meters per second. The devices aren't incredibly useful to the Foundation because of this, but were kept on opposite ends of the Earth, in Colombia and Singapore. During this debacle, the Foundation moved the devices to the Atlantic Ocean to use as a rudimentary projectile system. They began launching objects at a secure GOC facility called Ganzir, designed to house humanity's survivors in the case of the end of the world. Pietro surmises that 1290 was just one of a large number of anomalies the Foundation was using to try and break into Ganzir, and wonders why they wouldn't just use missiles. SCP-1440 is an old man that continually walks the Earth and causes increasingly destructive events when nearby anything connected to humanity, unintentionally. He's normally not contained by the Foundation, as they have no means of containing him, so they transport him to a number of different refugee camps to cause rapid devastation.
Okay. Yeah, I remember hearing about this guy. Vaguely remember hearing about the teleportation devices, and I definitely do remember the Build-A-Bear. And they're getting creative with some of these, using the old man here to sow destruction just by his very presence. I mean, there's a lot going on here.
It's most startling to note that 1440 seemed to have no effect on the Foundation personnel assigned to transport him, suggesting that they are now decidedly inhuman. SCP-1678 is a full-scale reconstruction of the City of London, located a kilometer underneath London. It seems to have been built for some sort of end-of-the-world scenario.
Interesting. Another version of London? Okay.
And the Foundation has been keeping tabs on it. After their declaration, the Foundation completely abandoned 1678, and eventually the British Occult Service directs citizens of London down underground, since the Foundation purposefully made evacuation of the city impossible. Once 1678 had reached its capacity with refugees from London, the Foundation detonated a nuclear weapon they had left behind in the underground city.
Oof.
Some files were deleted between this and the next entry, and Pietro says that it's been 3 months since his last entry. The files in that period have been deleted somehow, and even worse, Pietro himself has no memory of the last few months. He finds himself halfway across the country from Site 19, scars on his body that he doesn't recognize, a bandage wrapped around his head, and he's carrying a briefcase. The exclusion suit itself is not damaged, so he's not sure how he got injured, but he remarks that he wouldn't be surprised if he had accidentally walked off a cliff. He's not exactly sure what's in the briefcase, but he knows for sure that it isn't round, and he needs to get it to SCP-579.
The suit seems pretty cool. However, now that he seems to be losing large chunks of time and memory, he doesn't know how he got there, when he got there. He doesn't remember the route to where he arrived. It's at this point where I would be actively trying to get the suit off of me, because losing huge chunks of time like that it's not a good indicator.
Pietro is carrying an SCP in that briefcase, in fact. SCP-055. I've mentioned this one before, primarily in my anti-memetic.
Never mind. That explains his memory loss. Never mind.
Video, as 055 is pretty much the quintessential anti-memetic SCP. Anyone can view it and see exactly what it is, but the knowledge pretty much instantly leaks out of their heads. The only thing the Foundation really knows for sure is that the object in question isn't round. In other words, Pietro is carrying an unknown object, and wants to take it to another unknown object, 579. This exact scenario has occurred before, in SCP-2998, another subject I've covered in a video. In that ordeal, when a strange alien race took control of humanity, a Foundation agent takes 055 into 579's containment chamber, fitting a round peg into a square hole, as it were, which resets the timeline.
Really?
Pietro
Okay.
seems to be heading to do this exact same maneuver, but isn't sure why. As he continues walking across the country, he remarks on how far the containment unit for 579 is from Site 19. And the only way he knows where it is at all is because of some documentation he has, which he isn't sure how he obtained. He's walked past thousands of corpses so far, including a child in a house he was scavenging from. He thought at first the child had just been shot in the head, but when he went to bury him, he saw hundreds of pale worms wriggling underneath the boy's skin.
Ugh.
They poured out of the body as soon as he touched them, and they all had the boy's face, laughing as they scurried into a drain.
What?
Pietro decides not to bury anyone else.
I was about to say, my guy, it's the end of the world. You're going to run across bodies everywhere. You can't be stopping and taking time out of your day to be burying strangers in the apocalypse. You can't do it, my guy. You'll be there all day.
And struggles with continuing on his journey. He discovers that if he starts to get overwhelmed by his situation, all he has to do is open up the briefcase, and he suddenly finds himself miles ahead, feeling good about himself. 055 seems to be wiping out more than just knowledge about itself, but also entire blocks of time. Pietro finds
It's a dangerous game he's playing, though. Intentionally mind-wiping himself like that, that's a dangerous game he's playing.
the laptop and the corpse of a Foundation agent half buried in the woods. He finds more info on some anomalies that the Foundation are using against humanity. SCP-5000 is a facility under Yellowstone Park that can be used to recreate humanity in case of a disaster. The Foundation decides to trigger the eruption of Yellowstone, completely destroying SCP-2000 and blanketing most of the country in ash.
Okay.
This is interesting to note, as it means that the Foundation isn't just intent on wiping out the current crop of humanity and rebuilding it, but instead is intent on obliterating humanity completely.
Alright guys, this seems like a decent stopping place for today. A lot is going on in this one. SCP-5000 contains a lot of other references to a lot of other SCPs. Some of them I get, some of them I don't. We've covered some of them previously in other videos. This is pretty interesting. It seems like this is more a tale about the guy in the suit than the actual suit itself, because SCP-5000 is the suit. So it seems like this is more a tale about the end of the world, about the Foundation going mad for some reason, about this guy who's able to traverse the apocalypse thanks to SCP-5000. And essentially, he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he's trying to figure out how to stop it or how to fix it. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this video, but we're going to pick it up in part 2. Until then, we're going to leave it here for now, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did, go ahead and click that like button. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. It really helps me out. As always, leave comments down below. Let me know what other SCPs I should be checking out. Let me know what you guys think of SCP-5000. This is a pretty interesting one. And as always, guys, hey, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.